What if everything you've been told about the Black Irish is completely wrong? For generations, families across Ireland with jet black hair, pale skin, and piercing blue eyes have been called descendants of Spanish sailors from the doomed Armada of 1588. It's a romantic story, repeated in pubs and passed down as fact for centuries. But when scientists extracted DNA from modern Irish populations and compared it to ancient remains, they uncovered something that shatters this comfortable myth. The Black Irish aren't Spanish. They're not Viking either. The truth is far older, far stranger, and hidden in Ireland's most isolated corners for over 4,000 years. For centuries, the explanation seemed obvious. In 1588, the mighty Spanish Armada sailed against England, only to be smashed by storms off Ireland's coast. Dozens of ships sank. Survivors staggered onto Irish shores, dark-haired and olive-skinned, so different from the pale locals. The story goes that these sailors fell in love, married into Irish families, and passed down their distinctive looks through the centuries. It became the accepted explanation, repeated as fact in old villages along Ireland's west coast. But it was based entirely on assumption and romantic storytelling, not evidence. When geneticists analyzed Y chromosome lineages and mitochondrial DNA from Irish populations, they found virtually no trace of Iberian ancestry dating to the 16th century. The few sailors who did survive couldn't possibly change Ireland's population on a national scale. And that's when scientists realized they'd been looking in the wrong place entirely. Then there's the Viking theory. Much from the 9th to the 11th century, Norse raiders stormed Ireland's coastlines, founded Dublin, and settled in towns like Limerick and Waterford. Surely their DNA left a mark that could explain dark hair, and yes, it did leave a mark. About 6% of Irish men today carry Scandinavian Y chromosome lineages, according to genetic surveys from Trinity College, Dublin. But here's the problem. That Viking influence is strongest in Eastern Ireland, particularly in the cities they founded. It's not concentrated in the western counties, Kerry, Cork, and Galway, where the Black Irish look is most commonly reported. The geography doesn't match the theory. What about the Normans? In the 12th century, Anglo-Norman knights crossed the Irish Sea, conquering castles and marrying into noble families. But their genetic footprint is surprisingly shallow, mostly confined to aristocratic lines and small pockets in Eastern Ireland. So, the three most famous theories all fail to explain the pattern. Scientists had to look deeper, far deeper than shipwrecks or medieval invasions. To truly understand the Black Irish, we have to step back to around 2500 BC. This was the Bronze Age, and it brought a shockwave so powerful it reshaped Ireland's DNA forever. Before this time, Ireland was home to Neolithic farmers whose ancestors had sailed from the Mediterranean thousands of years earlier. Genetically, these early farmers carried diverse paternal lineages, Y chromosome groups like I2, G2, and H. Then came the Bell Beaker culture, a mysterious group who spread across Europe with distinctive pottery, advanced metalwork, and, most importantly, their DNA. When the Beaker people arrived in Britain and Ireland, they didn't just blend in. They replaced almost 90% of the existing population in just a few centuries. The evidence comes from Rathlin Island, off Ireland's north coast, where scientists uncovered the remains of 3 Bronze Age men buried between 2000 and 2500 BC. What they found in those ancient bones would rewrite everything we thought we knew about Irish ancestry. When the Rathlin Island remains were sequenced in 2015, the results, published in Nature, were astonishing. All 3 men carried the R1BL21 haplogroup, the same paternal lineage found in over 65% of Irish men today. It was like looking directly at the ancestors of modern Ireland. These Bronze Age newcomers carried variants for lighter skin and eye pigmentation, traits that spread quickly across Europe. But here's the twist. Even as these lighter traits rose, the genes for dark hair persisted. And in Ireland, those alleles didn't just survive. They flourished in certain communities, particularly in the isolated West. In 2017, the Irish DNA Atlas Project, led by the Royal College of Surgeons and Trinity College Dublin, analyzed people whose grandparents were all from the same regions of Ireland. Instead of one homogeneous population, Ireland broke into 10 distinct genetic clusters, 7 of these represented deeply Gaelic Irish ancestry. And where were the most distinctive, most ancient clusters located? You won't believe what the data revealed. Counties like Kerry and Cork showed the closest continuity with Bronze Age Irish populations. These Western groups had the lowest levels of Viking and Norman DNA, meaning later waves of invaders barely touched them. While most Irish carry around 7% Norwegian-like ancestry from Viking times, Western clusters often had far less. They remained genetically closer to their Bronze Age ancestors than to their Eastern neighbors. This matters because genetic isolation creates what scientists call founder effects. When a small population is cut off from the outside world, rare traits can survive and even become common. And in the West, those rare pigmentation genes, dark hair combined with pale skin and light eyes, had the perfect environment to persist over thousands of years. But the story gets even more specific when you look at Ireland's most famous trait. Ireland is world famous for red hair. Around 10% of the Irish population has it, the highest percentage of any nation on Earth. But what's less talked about is how the same country can produce the exact opposite. The answer lies in pigmentation genes, specifically MC1R. Variants of MC1R are responsible for red hair. About 8.4% of Irish people carry versions that boost the chance of red hair and freckles. But pigmentation is controlled by a network of genes that interact. Someone can carry a red hair gene, but if they also inherit strong dark hair alleles from other genes, the darker pigmentation wins. Those darker pigmentation alleles have been in Ireland since the Neolithic period. Some farmers who arrived from the Mediterranean carried them thousands of years ago. Later, when the Bronze Age population shift introduced lighter skin and eye genes, the two systems created Ireland's unique spectrum. But there's one more event that locked this genetic pattern in place forever. The same Bronze Age revolution that turned Ireland into a nation with the world's highest rates of red hair also preserved genes for jet black hair. This genetic balancing act, starting over 4,000 years ago, explains why Kerry, Cork, and Galway still produce families with a black Irish look. It's not Spanish sailors or Viking raiders. It's the product of Bronze Age migrations, Western isolation, and founder effects that preserved rare pigmentation combinations for millennia. The Great Famine of 1845 to 1852 amplified this effect. When Ireland's population plummeted from about 8 million to 4 million through death and emigration, entire villages vanished. In Western Ireland, where isolation already protected certain traits, the famine acted like a genetic filter. Communities that survived carried forward the unusual pigmentation genes that contribute to the black Irish appearance. And that's when the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. For centuries, the black Irish were explained through folklore, shipwrecked Spaniards, wandering Vikings, and secret aristocratic lines. But DNA doesn't care about romantic stories. It reveals the truth written in genetic code. The black Irish aren't foreign invaders who left their mark. They're the preserved genetic legacy of Bronze Age migrations, isolated in Ireland's western counties for over 4,000 years. The next time someone claims black Irish ancestry comes from Spanish sailors, you'll know the real story. It's not about one shipwreck in 1588, it's about genetic continuity, stretching back to 2500 BC, preserved in the most isolated corners of Ireland, where Bronze Age DNA still dominates the gene pool. But there's something even more surprising about what this means for understanding human migration patterns. These Western Irish populations represent one of the most genetically stable communities in all of Europe, carrying genetic signatures that have remained virtually unchanged for millennia. While most of Europe experienced wave after wave of genetic mixing from invasions, migrations, and conquests, these remote Irish communities stood apart. The Black Irish aren't a mystery anymore, and they're a living connection to Bronze Age Europe, walking proof that genetic traits can survive thousands of years when geography and isolation work together. The dark hair, pale skin, and piercing eyes that sparked centuries of speculation aren't foreign at all. They're among the most authentically Irish features you can find, encoded in DNA, long before Spanish ships ever sailed, before Vikings ever raided, before anyone ever whispered tales of mysterious dark-haired strangers on Irish shores.